Let me know when you're ready. Okay, good morning, everybody. Today's share is being sponsored for Schus, for Tzvi, Ben Rachel Yenta should find his Zivug, Hagun, Bekarav Mamash. Today we're going to be starting from Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin, Amud Beis. We're going to try to get all the way until Kuf Mem Dalid, Amud Beis by the Mishnah. So let's jump right into it. Amar, Reb Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. We're 3 lines from the bottom of the Amud. HaKoisev, Nechasav, La'acher. A person, Shchiv we could be talking about, he writes his nechasim to a person, a Ruvain, v'amar haloi, and Reuven answers back, efshi bahen, I do not want it. The halacha is, your kaina v'afilo oimid v'tzavech, even if he's screaming away that he does not want it, he still gets it. We're going to explain it in a moment. However, Rabbi Yochanan amar loi kana. Rabbi Yochanan holds, you are not kaina in such a scenario, amar Rab Abba v'mamol, v'loi pligi, they're not really arguing Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehuda. Kan, we're on Kuf Lamed Chesam at Aleph, B'tzavech Mikara, where he starts screaming right away, Kulam Amaydu, that he's not kainin. The Rishbam explains why, because it's a chayiv, like it says in the pasuk. V'soyne matanis yichya. Person does not want to accept matanis. However, regarding the noisin himself, the Rishbam is masber that he is misalik himself from it, and the halacha is it's hefker. Kan, however, in the scenario, in the beginning where you were quiet, and then you decided to wake up and start screaming, in such a scenario, the halacha is you are kaina. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak zika lo yadei acher v'shasak. A person gives it to somebody else, Ruvain, to give to Shimon. So in such a scenario, v'shasak l'basayv tzavach, in the beginning he was quiet when he saw him give him the star that he's saying is going to go to him, and then he started screaming later on. So that's a machlaikis. Bonu l'machlaikis, Reb Shimon Gamliel v'Rabbanan. The Tanya, like we have in the Brisa, Koisev nechasav la'acher, a person who writes his nechasim to somebody else. V'hayu behen avodim, and there were slaves in those nechasim. V'amar haloi yavshi behen, and the person that was going to accept the matana says, I do not want it. Afo pikein imaya rabon sheni koyin. If he himself, the makabel, is a koyin, the halacha is a reich l'metruma. The avodim can eat truma, and the reason is because avodim, that if the rabbin's a koyin, the halacha is he can eat truma. So we see that the noisin gave it lamaisa to the makabel, and the halacha is even though he's saveach, he's still getting it. However, if Shimon Gamliel argues, he says, Kivan shama haloi yav shiben. Since he says I do not want it, kvar zachu behen yarshim. The yarshim, the person who, the noisin, his yarshim get it, and therefore, if he's not a kohen, he cannot eat truma. And we inquired regarding the Tanakama, does that make sense? We can understand Shitas Tanakama, even if a person's screaming that he does not want the matana, he's going to get it. What are we talking about? There's no shayla if a guy's screaming right away, I do not want this matana, he's not kaina. The other way around, no one's going to argue in the scenario you said earlier that we started the day with, that in the beginning you were quiet, once you were quiet you're ready makabel, and now it's too late. And lamaisa, after you scream, the halacha is you're not kaina. What's the nafkamina? There's a few nafkaminas really happen, because a person can always, very nice he was kaina. Why can't he just be mafker later? There are a few nafkaminas. Whether there's a bal chayv, comes a bal chayv, in the scenario where you have bal chayvus. So if a person comes and says, I'm giving you my nechasim, and you stay quiet, suddenly all the Baal Chayvus could come and hound you for that money. That's a simple nafkamina that it can make a practical application why a person would not want it later. So keep pligi, where's the machlaikish? Zika loye day acher. In a scenario where Reuven gave it to Shimon, I said give it to Levi. And Levi was quiet in the beginning. V'shasak l'vasayv tzavach, the Tanakama savar, made the shasak kininu. Since you were quiet in the beginning, elamai, you accepted it, you were kainit. Now that you woke up, now you realize, you know what, I see so many Baal Chayvus are calling me, I'm better off without it. Let me stay quiet. Let me give it back. Reb Shimon Gamliel Sava, no. You would have screamed right away. Why only now did you wake up? Why should I scream before I even receive it? And the Lashon Rishbam is, it's a gnai to start suddenly screaming even if you did not receive the matana. Tana Rabbanon, Shchiv Marash, Amar Tnu Masayim Zuz Laplaini. In a scenario where Reuven, he's a Shchiv Marash, and he says, I want you to give 200 zuz to Pliny, shloish mais lepliny, 300 zuz to Levi, v'arba mais lezuz lepliny. So he's going 200, 300, 400. There are three separate people in the picture. We do not say kol hakoydne b'shtar zaycha. We don't say that Shimon, the first Mekabel, is getting it before the other Mekabel, the person that got 200. Lefikach, what's the nafkamina? Yatzal of shtar chayiv. Now comes a chayiv. Gaiv mekulam comes about chayiv and says, "You owe us money. Let's say he owes him $9, 1%. The halach is he gets the percentage from all of them, and the reason is that we say since he's a shchimera, we're talking about that there's no giving matanas. How else can he give it? Unless he does it beseder. We're saying Reuven gets a matana, and then Shimon, and then Levi. But a person cannot speak at once, saying Reuven, Shimon, Levi should get it all at one time. Therefore, the Bal Chayiv goes to Reuven. The first Mekabel gets $2, let's say. The second person gets 3, and the fourth person, he will get 4, etc., etc. Aval Amrar, however, in a scenario where he says, Tunu Masayim Zuz Leploni, I want you to give $200 dafka to Reuven. V'acharav, and only afterwards I want to give it to Shimon Leploni, let's say $300. V'acharav Leploni, and then to Levi $400. Imrim. Then we say, Kol hakoydne b'shtar zaycha. Dahainu, the first person that was makabel $200, he, when it comes to Bachayv, he does not have to give any money whatsoever, because he could say, there are other people that got money after me. Lefikach yatzal ashtar chayv, gayvim and achrayim. He could only go to the last person that got the money. Ain loy. If let's say he's owed more than that, or whatever the reason is that there's no money anymore, gayvim mishalafanav, and ain loy gayvim mishalifnei fanav. So again, it's totally at one point, does he say achrav or not? Unless he says achrav, we assume that he wanted to give it to everybody at one shot. Tanu Rabbanan, Shchiv Mirasha Amar, Tnu Masayim Zuz Pliny, B'ni Bechar. I want you to give $200, let's say 200 Zuz to Pliny. Who's the Bechar? Kara Eloi. As it befits him, as it makes sense to give it to him. So he's Maisif. The halach is Nightlan, he gets that 200 Zuz, Vin Naiteles Becharasai, and he does not lose the Bechayra. However, Amar Bebecharasai, the reason why I want you to give the 200 Zuz is for the schus of his bechayra. Then yadal ayayna. If it makes sense that his portion of the bechar is less than $200, then he's going to take the matana. However, if it's more, he's going to stay quiet. The halach is ratza naitlan, becharasai, whatever makes sense for him. And a similar concept would be ushchiv marash amar tnu masayim zuz leplini. Plainis ishti. I would like to give this 200 zuz to my wife. Karaila, as it befits her. The halach is again, night lasan, she gets her ksuba, and night telas ksuba, so she gets both. She gets her ksuba and the 200 zuz. However, im amar, big ksuba sa, the reason why I'm giving the $200 is for schus for ksuba, yada al yaina, then we say that she gets to choose, we're on kufla mechesa beis, and the Rishbam is masber, a scenario of other where she's not meichel. The Rishbam brings out one other point, the be'etzem, a person does not need to say, Bibecharasai. What's the point of adding that lashon? Bibecharasai. Oy big subasa. Dr. Ashbam who did him amar. On the bottom, the last 3 lines. Tnu masayim zuz b'laini b'ni stama. Even by saying it's stam. Ve'loyama bibecharasai. Even without mentioning it, the halach is yodai al yaina. And the reason why we say bibecharasai, the Rashbam, the last line says, Vaha. The nakadacha becharasis. Also shamina the afagav the parish behedya. Even in a scenario where he says meferish, I wanted to go for the bechar's portion. The halacha is he could take kol becharasai if it's worth more than $200. Why? The yadai al hal yaina. Another case is ratzanit. Lots of ratzanit tells kibasa. V'shchimera. Shama. The last case is about chayv. V'shchimera. We saw this by bechar. We saw this by isha. Now we're going to see about chayv. Ushchemara shama tnu masayim zuz leplini balachayvi. Karoi loy as it befits him. The halach is nightlam and nightlas chayvi. Ve'mamar bevchayvi. However, I want you to give him $200 because I owe him. And then the halach is nightlan bechayvi. He gets it as the chayv. Fraktig mara. Mishum, the Amma Karayla, in all these cases we're really asking, whether it's the Isha, whether it's the Bechar, whether it's the Balchayv. Mishum, the Amma Karayla, then the halach is suddenly Nightlam and Nightlos Chayvai, but Delma Karayla, but you know why it's Karayla? Bechayvai Kamar. He's coming to tell us, you know why it befits him? Because he's my Balchayv, because it's my Isha, etc. So Amr of Nachman, Amr Lihuna, who is the Shita? Mani Tzerbekivi, the Dayik, Lishna, Yesera. The extra lashon, since he did not need to say very clearly, he did not need to use the lashon karaila in any of these 3 cases, Elamai, why are you adding that lashon to tell us something we would have thought otherwise? On that, the chiddush is that you should get two portions. One, mitam the chayv, or whether the ksuba or the b'char's portion. And another reason is mitam the matana that he's giving. Where do we see this concept of extra lashon? The Tanan. We learned this earlier regarding the machlekes of Rekiva Rabbana Meicha Bayin Yafa Meicha Bayin Ra Meicher. When a person sells a house, v'loy sabar v'loy sadus. The halacha is he doesn't sell the bar and the dus. Bar, we explained already there. The only chiluk is dus is like a bar, just ones with binyan and not. V'loy sabar v'loy sadus. Afa pisha kasa loy umka v'ruma. Even though he writes that he's going to sell the depths of the house, etc., and the heights. V'tzorech likach like derech divrei Rekiva. Rekiva holds the Meicha Bayin Ra Meicha Bayin Yafa Meicher. Therefore, the halacha is he has to buy back the derech to get back to that bar. However, chamamayim ain't tzarich likach like derech. Umayde Rekiva's mayde. Bisman chamalei chutz meilu. When he says dafka chutz, when he's extra lashon, she'einay tzarich likach like derech. Why ama kivin the light tzarich? Since he does not need it, v'ka'amar, and he says it l'tefuye milsikasi. Achinami kivin the light tzarich v'ka'amar l'tefuye milsikasi. We're showing us this concept. When a person does not need to say this lashon, and he throws it in, elamai, he's coming to tell us that he wants to give him something extra, and over there, the case by the bar of this will be a derech. Who did in our sugya, whether it's the bechar, whether it's the ksubas isha, whether it's the bachayv, he's coming to tell him that he wants an extra portion. Tanu Rabbanon. What about the two dots and kufla mechesam Beis? Shchiv mirasha amar mane yesh li etzel pleni. The Scheiner gets up and he says that there's $100 I have etzel Ruvain. The halacha is the Eidim kaisvim. Afa pi she'ein makirin. The halacha is the Eidim corrected even though they do not know if he's really im nischayv like klum or lav. Dr. Ishban. The halacha is even though he doesn't know lifikach, therefore kashu gaivet. Tzarech lavi raya divrei mer. All the Eidim are writing is that they testifying on what happened. Unless the Eidim really figure it out and they find out. Lifikach gaivet. Ein tzarech lahavi raya, and the nafkamina is not going to have to bring a raya. Amar Rav Nachman Amarli Huna Tana. The teachers of the Brisa learn their Rameir Aimer ein kaisvim chamaimim kaisvim. After Rameir loy Amar. The only reason why Rameir says that we do not write it, Ela mishum bezdin toin. The only reason why we're chayshish is we're nervous that bezdin might make a mistake. They're going to think that the Eidim did the chakiras already. In reality, the Eidim never did the chakiras, therefore that's the problem of Chashash Bezdin. The we're not worried such a thing. The Amar Rava scenario is the halach of chalitza and mean ein chaltzin. We do not do chalitza in ki makirin unless we know for a fact that it's the brothers. Apologize. Ve'im imanin. And we don't do mean unless we know the fikach kaisen get v'chalitza v'get mean. Ve'afa pishei makirin. So what's the word? My time alamashum the chayshin bezdin tayin. The only reason why we have to do and check to make sure it's the proper people involved in the chalitza mean, because we're chayshish for bezdin tayin, which means to say is the bezdin might make the mistake and think that the Eidim already did something that they really in reality never did. And that the Gemara says no, loy. Bezdin Basra Bezdina loy daiki. The Bezdina Basra Eidim daiki, which is a very simple svara, that Bezdin is not going to go and question another Bezdin, someone on their level. Mesha'en kain Eidim, it's not a big deal to check into and look into it. On Kufla Mechetzim and Beis, by the bottom of the Mishnah, Ha'av toilish umachil l'chol mi sheyirtze. The Rishbam is masbeh, but the case is we're talking about someone who's writing his nechasif to his son. La'achar Maisa we're talking about, and he's saying that I want you to be kaineh the guf today, but I'm going to have the pay rise till he's nifter. So we learned this extensively last week's daf, all throughout the dafim of the schos of the pay rise. And the halacha is that whatever the father is toilish, that's his pay rise. However, all the fruit, when he's nifter, all the fruit that are attached to the tree, b'shas misa, even though it's ripe and you could easily take off those, let's say those plums, the halacha is it goes to his son, who's the mekabel mitana. And we're going to be mashbeh dafka his son, where you have more das. However, if a person writes it to somebody else, if it's mechober lekarka, he's not going to get it, rather the yarshim going to get it. So let's see inside. Ha'av It's in a scenario where he said that you're getting the pairs. If it's left still on the tree, even though it's easy to be toilish it, it's ready and ripe, the halacha is it goes to the yarshim. Frekting Mara, is that really true that dafka tolish in mechuber loy? You're telling us that whatever's tolish goes to the yarshim, but if it's mechuber to the karka, we consider it a gufa karka. V'atanya one kufla metasam and aleph shamin es amechubarin lelakeach. In a scenario, mamish this case, where the son went and he sold the schus of the guf. The hainu mamish the case we had in the Mishnah. The Reuven said, "I'm ready selling you the guf today." So he went and sold it to Shimon, and then the father died. The halach is we evaluate whatever's still mechuber, and that difference he has to pay the yarshim. So you clearly see that in a scenario where there's fruit attached, as long as it's still attached, it goes to not to the lakeach, rather it goes to the yarshim. What's the difference in the Mishnah? And that the more answers, I'm hulay kasha. Kan bibenoi, our son, our Mishnah is talking about his son. However, Kan ba'acher, in the scenario where you sold it, Reuven sold it, gave Shimon, the son, sold it to the lakeach. There, where mechalik, we say that if it's mechuber still, it's not going to go to him. And the Gemara's masber, why? Since Lamaisa, a person, we all know, he's very close to his son, and he's maknit to him, everything completely, as long as it's not mamish mechuber to the karka. Zok the Mishnah one kufla metasam at aleph. Heniach bonim g'doylim miktanim. Person who's nifter and he left over. Sons, whether they're old, they're young, and there's bamis masber, a person did not write his nechasim. He did not make a proper halacha quilt. The halacha is ein agdoilim misparnesim ayidei aktanim. Regarding clothing, the gdoilim do not take from the ktanim. The hainu, there's such a thing we're going to see. It's called tfusas habayis. When a person dies, there's the pot. We call it the pot full of Yerusha. Now, you have a choice to split it equally. Everyone's going to get whatever they need. And then we split it. And then once it's split, no one cares how you spend it. But till you split the karka, we care. The Yerusha, we care how you spend it. It's not, you can't just freely spend. So regarding clothing, the halacha is, since the older kids spend much more on clothing, they can't take from the tfusas habayis. So, same thing with food. Since the younger children need much more food, they don't do it. Rather, we immediately split it. We take the tfusas habayis, we split it, and once it's split, it makes sense. Nasu hagdoilim, the older kids got married. Yisu haktanim. We're going to see this in the Gemara. It's going to be maz with this. V'imamru ktanim. However, if the ktanim say, "Harei anu noisin," we want to get married, just like you got a very fancy wedding. Kedersh nesasim atam. Ain't shaymelan. We don't listen to them. Elo mashin nasan lamavian nasan. Rather, whatever the father gave, he gave. Hiniach bonis gedoilis ktanis. Now, there's a little difference between older sons and younger sons to the bonis, where a person left only the bonis gdoilos and ktanis. Ein hagdoilos misparnis oisayidek ktanis, very similar to the ratio of like ktanis nizonis al gdoilos. Same halacha is going to apply regarding the clothing and the mizonis. Elo chalkos b'shaveh nasu gdoilos yesu ktanis. V'im amru ktanis, if the younger children say reinu noises, we want to get married kederech shenesasem atem ein shaymelem. Same halacha. However, so what's the chilek between the ratio and the sefer? The ratio is talking about the boys. The sefer is talking about when there's only girls. What's the chilek? Zeh chaymer mibanes mibanim. Shabanes nizoines alabanim ve'ein nizoines alabanis. And there's Bav's Masber, we learned there's a concept called ksuvas benon nukvan, which means to say is, in a scenario where a person dies, the halach is the yarshim have to feed the girls. So, and let's say there's only very few nechasim, the banim still have to be in hisparnis, the bonus. However, what happens in a family of only girls, that the older girls died, the father died, in such a case, do the older girls, are they mechuyev to feed the younger daughters, mitam, the concept of ksubas benon nukvan? And that, the Mishnah is mechadash to us, if there's only girls involved, there is no tanai ksuba of benon nukvan, and they're going to get taka in a chanami, when there's only girls involved, they're going to get away with something special, that if there was boys, they would still have to be misparnis and feed the younger sisters, mitam ksubas benon nukvan. Zok the heilige Gemara, Amar Rava, Hai Gadol Achi, the older brother goes, the lavash ve'ichsi b'beis, he buys, he takes a lot of money, takes the credit card and stops swiping, nice clothing, and bought himself a nice Scheiner coat. The halacha, cloak, whatever it is, my David, whatever he did. Like he shouldn't have done it, but now that he did it, he did it. That's our Mishnah, that a person is not allowed to use clothing from the Tfusas Habayis. My answer is Masnisin is Beshercha. What Shercha Zokter Shbam? It's a Adam Bato. The older brother is not involved in business, he's just sitting at home. And the Rabbeinu Gershom has a lashon with the Dalid, Beshetcha Askinon, but the same type of concept of a Adam Bato. So since he's Adam Bato, what's the point of getting nice clothing? Masha'enkein, the Bechar, or whatever it is, the older brother, that he buys a nice coat, at least he's helping the family's prestige. He's doing business, it's going to help everybody. In fact, tomorrow, if we're talking about Adam Batal, Shecha, Pshita, then he's not allowed to go and buy himself clothing with it. If he did it, he has to pay back to the Tfusas Habayis. My answer is, Mao the Tema, Nicholo the Loinimvel, I say he's a brother, and you want him to wear nice clothing. Kamashma, no, we don't say such a concept, and you must refund all the money that you spent for the nice clothing. Nosug, Doilim, Yisuk, Tanim. Frak the Gemara, my Kamar, and there's Bamas Masber. L'char in the Mishnah, it sounds like a stira from the Reisha to the Seifa. Why? And the Reisha says that if the older ones get married, so too the younger ones. But then a second later it says that if you do not, the younger ones don't have a taina that you could get married just as fancy as the older ones. So what's going on? Could they get married like the older ones, or they don't get married like the older ones? What in the world is happening? And that review this Masber, review the Hachikamar. You're right. If the father was nifter and they got married as Yisayimim, then in a chanami. Whatever they spend for the older ones, Hoadin, the younger ones have a taina that we want to spend that $50,000. Yisuktanim la'achar misa safiyan. However, in a scenario where everything was going well, the father was a very successful businessman, money's flowing, he made a very fancy chasna. Lamaisa, the reality is, Rahman's son, the father suddenly was nifter, there's no money coming in. And that the Mishnah tells us, the younger brothers can't come and say, just like with our father we made $100,000 chasna, Hoadin, we also want a Scheiner chasna, and that we say, Lamaisa, where Yisayimim now, we have no choice but to make a very beer necessity chasana. V'amro, and that we're saying, oh, we want to get married as fancy as you guys. Rather, that's the halachas, it makes sense. There's a concept that reality changed. It was very nice. When the father was rich, you make a Scheiner chasana, now there's no money coming in. Niach bonus, the Mishnah said, Niach bonus gdoilis v'tanis. We said it's the same halachas as bonus, very similar to the ratio. The only difference is b'non nukvan. That ksubas b'non nukvan. So sholach le'avua b'aganiva l'rava. Yilamdeinu rabbeinu. Should please teach us. Rava, teach us. What is the halacha? The girl went, loves of achla. She means like achla means consume the chayv. So she borrowed money. V'amda v'nissis. L'maisa. She borrowed money, she ate up the whole entire chayv, and then she got married. So how do we look as a Baal? Now we all know that Baal is a concept of a Baal, of nichsim elok. He gets to eat all the produce of her nechasim. However, how do we look at the Baal? Do we look at it as a Baal as a lekeach have, a yirish have? What's the nafkamina? How we look at the Baal? Who cares whether we look at him as a lekeach or a yirish? So the Mars Masber. If he's a lekeach have, then umilva pein govin lekochais. Since he only borrowed Chaim. Can I bother you for that tissue box back? If he's a lekeach, thank you. If he's a lekeach, then we can understand. Because umilva pe ain't a govin lekochais. Idilma yirish have umilva pe govin yarshim. The nafkamina again between a lekeach and a yirish is that if he's a lekeach, the halacha is if Ruvain got the money. This girl again loves of achla was a milva pe. Milva pay, you can't go to the kuchais. It's only nechas mishabadim. However, that's one side. Idilma yirish have, we consider you a yirish. The Baal is a yirish. Now look, is milva peh gavin a yarshin. And the reason is, it's also takana, is that imagine a person asks me, can I borrow $20,000? Very practical. You say, no problem, I'm getting the money the next day. 100%, you taka verified it. Lamaisi, you get the news, he had a heart attack. There goes your money. And that we're saying, so a person will never lend money for that risk. Therefore, even though it's a milval peh, as long as you can prove it with Eidim, whatever it is that you can prove it, then the Yarshim Avad still have to pay back that money. So again, it's also a takana. So that's the nafkamina. How do we look at the Baal? Is he a lekeach or a Yirish? And that we're saying, Amalei Tanina, we have a brayso. Not sugdailos, yisuk tanis. Mamash our Mishnah actually. Mishnah says, not sugdailos, the older ones get married. The younger ones have a taina to get money. And the Haminas were thinking, where are they getting money from? We're going to the older sister's husbands and we're moneying the money. That's what we're thinking. My lab, not sugdailos lebal, yisuk tanis, mibal. The hain with the mem. That we're going to the husband and money back. The money, elamai, you see from there, that what do we look at it? We look at you as a Yairish. And then the Gemara says, no. That doesn't mean that. Like, Nasuk Dailas Labal. It means to say as if Rachel, the older sister, got married. So you say, how much was the chasana? So too, Yisuk Dailas Libal. For their husbands, they could go. Where are they getting the money from? They're getting from the escrow account, wherever the money is that's held by the askanim of the town, by the petropos, wherever the money is held, that's where they go and take out the money. But Avada, they're not going to the Baal himself of the older sister, the older brother-in-law, Bekitzer, and asking him for the money. Eini frektamarav Tanya Bchia Nasuk Dailas Labal Yisuk Tainis Mibal. It clearly says, and we have clearly even a scenario that you are able to go to the husband. Very nice. Maybe our Mishnah is a Bab. We have scenarios you are allowed to go to the husband. Elamai, it's a raya l'chayra bam raya that the husband's considered a yairish. And then the Gemara answers, no, you still can't bring a raya. Why? Dilmashani parnasa de islakola. Everyone knows that what? That you need to marry off these kids. This is the parnasa. Since it's a call, you can't compare it to a regular case. Amalei Rapapla Rava. Lav hainu the shalach Ravin be'igrate. Didn't Ravin already send us in a letter? Mi shemes. Someone who was nifter v'niach almana hu bas. We're going to see this later. And he left over almana and a daughter. The halach is almana nizaynis me nechasav. The almana gets to nechasav before the bas even. Nises habas. The daughter gets married. Almana nizaynis me nechasav. Me nechasav. Meisa habas. What is the halach? The daughter dies. Meisa Abbas and the Baal is Yairish. Amar Yehuda ben Achayso Shab Yisib Chanina Ayidai Haya Meisa. V'Amru Mamish this case. Amanasa Nizaynis Menachasev. So what are we trying to bring? And the Mars be Masber. What so far we explained very nice that the Amana gets from the Chasev. What's the Raya? So Zok the Mars follows. Amit Bishma Yairish Have. If you're going to tell me the Amana, we consider the Baal as a Yairish Mushum Hachi Amanasa Nizaynis Menachasev. Then we can understand that the Amana can take from the Nechasav. You tell me he's a Lekeach. Why in the world could you go take it from his Nechasav? Amabai, you love the Shalach Ravin. Okay, so very nice. You're bringing me a raya that what? That the Baal's a Yairish. Amabai, you love the Shalach Ravin. If Ravin wouldn't have sent us this fancy letter, and not Adina, we wouldn't have known if a Baal's a Lekeach, a Yairish, Tanan. We have a Meferish the Mishnah, Elu she'ein chayzrin b'yovel. We all know by the stay achuzah regarding yovel, everything comes back regarding the yovel. However, there are two cases that don't. Ha b'chayra, regarding a chelik b'chayr, b'char, the matana zokter ishba matana kaira rechmana to give him pishnayim. We're on kufla metesam Beis, va'yirish es ishtay. And again, there's Shvan's Mazda. Once you are a Yairish, later on we can't consider you on after the Misa Lekeach. So l'chayra we have a Bam Raya without Rav and l'chayra, that the way we look at the Baal as a Yerush. Amalei Rav v'hashtu the Shalach. Is that really true? Now, Adina, do we really have a clarity if a Baal's a Yerush or Lekech? Because now you're showing us a Raya from Chelek, from Stei Achuzah, that what? That a Baal's a Yerush. Frek the Mara, Amar Rabbi Yosef Chanina. We have Rabbi Shittas Rabbi Yosef Chanina that says, Ba'usha eskino. They were Mesakin and Usha. Aisha shemachra nichsim elog bechaye baila. Umesa Baal, Umesa, Habal Maitzim Yad Lakuchas. So you clearly see that what? How do we look as a Baal? Baal is a Lekech. The Hainu, they got married Rishchay the Sivan. And the way we look at Rishchay the Sivan, B'Shas HaMaitzim, we look at her as a Lekeach. If you're a Lekeach Rishon, and then goes the wife and sells it to Lekeach Sheni, now that she died, since you're the Lekeach Rishon, B'Shas HaChasna, you're able to come and take away from the Kuchas. The only way to understand to take it to the Kuchas is showing you that a Baal's Lekech. So what in the world is going on? We have a stira. We have certain rayos from Yosef Bechanina the Baal's a Lekech. We see by Stei Achuzah that what? A Baal's a Yairish. So what is a Baal? Is he a Yairish or is he a Lekech? Elamar Ravashi, Baal Shavinu Rabbanon Ki Yairish, Shavinu Rabbanon Ki Lekech. Ravashi says you're right. Depends. Sometimes we consider a Baal as a Yairish, sometimes a Lekech. Where do we decide what it is? Vehecha de tavulei avdulei, whatever benefits him. He has Yad al Yaina. If it makes sense for him to be a Yairish, For example, Snei Achuzah, we consider him a Yairish because it's much better. If, for example, to take away from other Lekuchais, you want to be a Lekeach Rishon, we consider you a Lekeach. Gabi Yovel Shevi Rabbanan Keyirish. Again, Mishum say that today, so you shouldn't have to get back to Snei Achuzah. Gabi the Reisi Bechanina, where you want to be a Lekeach Rishon, Shevi Rabbanan Kelekeach. Mishum say that today. Gabi the Ravin, why by Ravin suddenly it's a little different? There we see there's Almana involved. Mishum say that the Almana Shevi Rabbanan Keyirish. Fact tomorrow, so you care about Almana, you don't care about the other Lekuchas. Lamaisi you're a Baal. Fact tomorrow, Gabi the Reisi Bechanina, the Ikab say the Lekuchas Shevi Rabbanan Kelekeach. Why we don't care about the other Lekuchas? The Gemara answers, Hasam inu avsidan avashayu. You as a lekeach, by buying from a wife, you should know good and well that there's a husband involved. Kivan the ikabal, since there's a husband, laibayilahu lemizvan, you never in the world should have bought from such a woman. Me'itisa the yasva tusik afrit, from a woman who has a husband. Why? Again, because we're worried that the husband could come, so you took your own risks, enter your own risk, therefore we consider you the first husband as a lekech. Now, Rishban's Mazah, one last point, he brings Rabbeinu Chanano. Le'inyan shilsa de she'ilno. We explain Lamaisa, the halacha is mistabra te keyirish havre. Lamaisa, in the case of lofsav achal, to answer our question. That's how we started the end of the daf. What is the halacha regarding Isha that borrowed money and spent it? Is the bala yirish a lekeach? Lamaisa, the Rabbeinu Chanano, they bring down, we consider him a yirish. But why? Because of the pseudo da mava. In such a case, the mava had no way of knowing what would have happened. Therefore, we're going to consider you a Yairish. And again, wherever there's a Hefsid, we're going to say that we make him a Yairish. Hadron alach yesh neichlin. Hadron alach yesh neichlin. We're going to go into a brand new parak. Misha Meis, also quite an extensive, lengthy parak. It's the second to last parak. Misha Meis. V'niach bonim ubonis. A person dies and he leaves over multiple children. The halacha is as follows. Bezman she'nechasim merubin. We're going to discuss that in a moment, exactly what it means. A large sum of money. Habonim yirshu the bonim ayirsh. V'habonis, however, the daughters, ye zainu, they get at least food to live off. We're going to see until when. Nechasim mu'atim. Again, we're going to discuss what that means, but if it's only nechasim mu'atim, the halacha is habonis, in such a scenario, they get first dips, and they get yizainu, they automatically get the mezainis. V'habonim, what's going to be with the sons? Yishal up sachem, they have to go and knock on the doors to get money. Admin Aimer. Amon gets up and he starts trying. He says, Bishvil shani zachar, sadati, just because I'm a zachar, and the Gemara in the Amid Beis is going to explain what that means. I should lose out. Amar Gamliel, Royani. As Divrei Admin Lamaisa, we bring down the halacha is, because Rabbi Gamliel says Royani is Divrei Admin, the halacha is taka like Admin. Zok the Gemara, V'kama merubin. We clearly said in the halacha is when it's nechasim merubin, the bonois are yerish and the bonois are get the mizainis. Again, today, with inflation and everything, family of 5, let's say 250,000, whatever the numbers are, under a certain amount, as long as it's enough to last for 12 months. That sheet that's read the Gamliel. No, much more than that, sometimes more, sometimes less. What is the share? We don't say a flat rate of 12 months. Rather, we look case by case. We see the daughters, how old are they? And we go until they become begaris, which is around 12 and a half. So sometimes it could be a kula. It sounds like, I'm thinking, when the daughters are only 12. So it's only 6 months. And sometimes it's much more l'chumrach. Rahman al-Islam, they left over children, young children. You need mamish a lot of money to last for years and years until they become begaris or get married. It menami kiyasi rabban amar b'yaychan abami law. Hey, that's considered merubin. Now, frektimara bam kasha. It sounds like nechasim muatim. The second, it sounds like there's a red line. Over, let's say, over 100,000 is considered nechasim merubim, and then we have the practical halach in our Mishnah, which is the banim are yirish and the banis get the mezainis. But it sounds like under the red line, $99,000. What's the halacha? We're going to have a trigger called nechasim muatim, which is the banis get it, and the banim have to go knock on doors. However, frektimara. V'lekalei leveila chivagru shaklu lubanis lekulu and daf kuf memam and aleph. Dahainu frektik maro. How much does it? How much do you need to feed a girl? Let's say $50,000. But in order to get to the level of nechas merubim, you need much more. What happens if you're right under that amount? You're going to take everything. You're not going to leave over anything to the banim. Why should they have to knock on the doors? Elamarava might see lem is zaynis lebanis ad chivagru. You're right. that avada, they do not get more than what they need. Whatever they need, they're going to get. V'hashar banim, and the rest is going to go to the children. So, Lamaisa, there is this very simple question in the Mishnah. Then why did the Mishnah need to give very specific two cases? The halach of nechasim merubin, the halach of nechasim mu'atim. It's really one shaila. Do they go and have to get mezainis and knock on the doors or not? It's totally $50,000. It's $50,000. Why are we separating the cases? So the Scheiner talking about the Rishbam, the nafkamina is that the halacha is, once the halacha is it's nechasim merubin today. Today it's over $100,000. What does the Mishnah say? Habanim yirshu. And the chiddush is that once you're Yairish, even though the stock market, whatever it is that he owned, suddenly collapsed or the other direction, now Be'etzim would have halacha today. A week later, the halacha would be what? It would be considered nechasim mu'atim, and that the bottom say, nope, we're ready, Yairish. So that's the nafkamina, why we want it to be dafka very specific cases that we could evaluate. Is it today what? Nechasim merubim or nechasim mu'atim? The nafkamina is going to be Yarshim. Other Rishonim want to learn it. Has to do totally if the banim have a halach of apitropisim, if it goes into Bezdin. We went through this extensively during the Daf Yomi. Again, today we're just doing a brief chazara. Frak the Gemara, pshita merubin v'nismatu kvar zachu bahen yarshim. So it's very clear in a case where it was worth much more than $100,000. Now it's much less. Kvar zachu bahen yarshim, they got it. However, now we have a shayla mu'atim and israbu mai. What is the halacha where is considered under the $100,000 mark? So what is the halacha? The banis get it, and the banim have to go knock on the doors. Now the Maisa Trump wins, stock market goes up, whatever it is, and it's worth much more. Because the banis have a taina, la Maisa, we got it, and you got it, we get the profits. You got to continue knocking on the doors, and the banim say, hey, wait a second, right now it's above that mark. Let us get the money. So Zoktimar, do we say it's Bishos Yarshin Kaimi, the sons have a schus betzim in it the whole time, and therefore the sons get the profit. Hilkach Bishos Yarshin Shavuach. Laidilma Saluk Misalki Lamaisa Bishas Mi, so they realize there's not enough money. And the Yarshin were Misalik, Saluki, Misalki Yarshim Hacha. So what is the halacha? So Toshma, let's bring a ride, Rabbi Rabbi Yechanan, Yesaimim, Shekadmu. Umachru b'nechasim u'atim. Lamaisa, what is the halacha nechasim u'atim? The banis really have to get it, and the banim got to go knock and start collecting money. What happens? They weren't nice. They quickly took the whatever it was, and they sold it. All the nechasim. The halacha is masher machru. Even though we have a halacha that the banis should get it, lamaisa we say, lamaisa it's theirs. They were Yarish, and whatever they sold, they sold. So what's the raya? Lamaisa, the raya is Dr. Ishbam. Shma mina kivan she machru mechirasa mechira. If you're going to say it is a good mechira, elamai yesh lahen tfisas yad b'nechasim. Elamai, it's really theirs. They're holding on to it. They sometimes they're about to say you got to let go because the girls it's a busha for them to go knock on doors. Therefore you have to get it. V'nisrabu zakter shbam yesh lahen chelik behen v'schuson bahen my medis. So l'chayr it's a bon raya that the sons have a tfisa in the nechasim. Yosef Rabbi Yirmiyah kamei dervav v'kabay minei. So we're going to have a bunch of shaylas. Do we say it's intim salaimers, amana, b'choy, bas, ishtai, etc., etc. Frekting more as follows. What is the halacha when you count the effects of the amana? If you count the amana, you're going to go under the $100,000 mark. Therefore, you're going to have a trigger called nechasim mu'atim, and the bonus are going to get it all. Me, I'm reading Kim in this lamizayni lamaisi. You have to feed the amana mimaita, and you're under the $100,000 mark. You can say no. The chilik between Alman and everyone else, kivan the ilu mitzvah, if she would get married, lesla. So hashtanami also today we should say lesla. Imtin tzalaymar. Again, all these shadows are working with the imtin tzalaymar. Kivan the ilu minasa lesla. If lamaisa she would easily get married, what's the halach? You wouldn't have the chasim. So hashtanami lesle. We could still have another shaila regarding bas ishta. Bas ishta is you mechay yourself for 5 years, whatever it is that you're going to feed your daughter, your wife's daughter. And the halacha is, even if she gets married, the daughter, you still have to feed her, you still have to support her. So, even when she gets married, Nami Isla doesn't change the difference. And you still have to feed her. If she would die, lesla, which is a very big chiddush, the concept of mace, because if you're working with mace, maybe you should have a shayla by a girl. There's banim and banis. Imtim Zulaima, the banis die, you'd also be considered chasim merubim. It's a very difficult concept to understand how we can even evaluate the concept of mace. Mace didn't say that halacha by banim abanis, imtim shalaim, the banis will die, then it'll be considered nechasim merubim. So where does it go until? Kiven di lemesa lesser v'loy mata. V'im tim salayim going to tell me kiven di lemesa lemesa she dies lesser. V'loy mata. We have a balchayv. Balchayv is much harder. Balchayv mao she might be nechasim. Me I'm reading on again. We have a shayla. Kiven the chimayis lemaisa nam yislam might because the yarshim can still come. I del mo kiven the mechasri guvayna loy might lemaisa until he gets the chayv himself. It's not going to make a difference. V'ikid the boylo leidach gisa. Some want to say it a different direction. It's a very practical nafkamina. Because whenever we have intim tzaloyma, that's taka the halacha. So now we're going to go the opposite direction. First start with the balchayv maushi might be nechasim. What is the halacha regarding the balchayv one kuf mem amid Beis? It's an intim tzaloyma the Rashbam is masber. That what? That the balchayv is mimayit. Bas ishtay mau. What is the halacha by bas ishtay? Again, shetemay ben nechasim. Again, intim tzaloymar. Amanasai mau shetemayit ben nechasim. Now we have a shaila with the four shaila, which is going whether the idach gisa doesn't make a difference. We have another shaila. Amanasayu bas eze mehen kedemes. You have a daughter and you have almana. How do we consider the almana? Who comes first? There's not enough money. Only one of them are going to get the nechasim. The other ones need to go and knock on the door. So who should go? They're both females. Who should go? The almana or the bas? Amalei tells him back, Zilin, no, leave now. V'salamach, come back tomorrow, and I'll have a decision by then. Ki also Amalei pshoitz miyachad l'maisa bring your right. Amar Abasi asu almana. We view the almana till a bas kibas till a achen b'nechasim mu'atim. Now what? Ma bas etzel achen. Just like a girl, we understand with the brothers. Ha bas nizoinis va'achen yishalu psachim af almana etzel a bas. Who's considered the one who stays at home is the almana nizoinis va'habas. Einachanami to the daughters tishoel al psachim. Well, up to the last point we said in the Mishnah, which is Shitas Admin. Admin says, I don't understand why by Nechasim U'atim I should lose money. Admin Oimer, Bishvil Shani Zacher, Sativ, Sefrak Gemara, my Kamar, since when do we have a concept called male rights? My Yipa Yesh Koich LeZacher. What is the taina of Admin? And that Abai is Masma, Abai Hachi Kamar. Bishvil Shani Zacher, Viroi Ani Lasik B'Taira. I'm sitting and learning Torah of Sati. I'm like, Rav, I don't understand something. You're going to tell me someone who has two sons. Elamata, man does to be Torah the Yars, for life to be Torah Layars, and Ishban's Master. Someone has Reuven and Shimon, his sons. You're going to tell me Reuven's a Tamachacham, Shimon is a Baal Boss. Reuven's going to get the money? Chas v'sholom. We have Nachlam and a Torah that the sons are Yairish. We never mechalik such a concept. And Rava argues, and the Beis says, no, Hachi Kamer. This is what Admon's tain is. Bishvil Shani Zachar. If it was Nechasim Rubim, I am Yair. So why should I lose when it's Nechasim Mu'atim, if Satim, Nechasim Mu'atim, and it's Taka the Allah like Adar and Gamliel? But however, to be Mazbet Tanakama saying, Avadi, you're right. Hilchas Torah, you should be Yairish. You Taka by Nechasim Rubim. However, we have a sensitive question over here. Who could go into Shul over here, into this Shul and start collecting? Who has the easier time? Men or ladies? We all know the answer to that. So Zok Tanakama on that makes much more sense. You have to be mevater. That's part of the takana. And you must give it to your sisters, and you could come into Shul and start collecting. We had a brand new Mishnah. Heniach, bonim, uvanois, v'tumtum. We're going to discuss at length a tumtum. Now a tumtum, we spoke about this once recently regarding tumtum shenikra, which means a tumtum is somebody that's born. It's a little different than a dragonus. A dragonus has zacharus vinikavis involved. A tumtum is really one of them. However, it's in the guf, and we have no way of knowing today, right now, b'shasa leida, before any medical zachin, we have no way of knowing what is this person. Is it a zachar or an akeva? Now, the Rashbam does bring one mahalach, a mandamar, that holds it's a barrier chadasha. Tumtum is nishta male, nishta female. A barrier chadasha, it's its own barrier, and it's not going to be any of the above. So let's jump inside. What is the halacha? Someone gives birth to such a person, a tumtum. When there's a lot of money, so the halacha is, we all know, we just learned to the Mishnah prior that what? That the banim are yairish and the banis are what? Get them zainais. Hascharim daichen isa. It's in the caves. They push him to the caves. Say, prove it to us, you're zachar. And he can't prove it, so they go to the caves. We're going to see what happens. What do the nekavers respond to the tumtum? Depends really if it's berich hadash or not. Nechasim u'atim. However, if it's small nechasim, that the halacha is, let's say, under the $100,000 mark, then nekavos comes to nekavos and says, we get the schos now, nekavos daiches and it's l'scharim. And we learned the Mishnah prior that the banim don't get any money in such a case. Therefore, go prove it to us that you are a nekeva. Ha'omer. In Taylor Ishti, guy gets up and he says, if my wife gives birth to a Zachar, I'm going to give him $100, Yitom on it. Yolda Zachar, Yitom on it. Taki gives birth, he's going to get $100. If it's in a Nekeva Masayim, Yolda Nekeva, Naiteles Masayim. Im Zachar Mana, Im Nekeva Masayim, then Taki Yolda Zachar or Nekeva, whether it was a male or female, Zachar Naitom Mana. Nekeva Naiteles Masayim. What happens? Yolda Tum Tum. Suddenly gives birth to a tumtum, unexpected, ain't a naitel. He doesn't get anything. However, he says, whatever my wife gave birth, instead of saying Zachar Nekeva, and there's Mamas Mazra Lamaisa, you clearly see if it was Lashon, maybe he's taka wondering, whatever the doctors might have told him, that there's a chance it's going to be a tumtum. Yitol, then Allah is a raise a yitol. The Amen Sham Yairish Elahu, Lamaisa is only the only child, then we don't say he's nothing. Rather, we don't say, it says in the Torah, Ben Ein Loi, then it goes to the Achav, so maybe where does it mention Tumtum in the Torah? The Allah is, and then the Allah is, Ve'im Sham Yairish Elahu, Yairish, it's a call, and there's Bam's Masber, either we're not going to be Mitzi from Ben, or stop. The Pasuk says, Hakarav Eilav Mimishpachta V'Yarish Aisa, no one's questioning that the Tumtum is considered the closest to the father. Now, Zok Tehela Gemara as follows: Daichin Aisai v'Shakol Kubas. The Mishnah says in the beginning of the first case, Benachas Merubim, what do? The Scharim throw him to the Nekevas. It's like a ping pong. He said, go to the Nekevas. For Gemara, Tani Sefer Yolda Tumtum ain't an Eitel. It clearly says by the Nekeva that you don't get anything. Aktani Sefer Yolda Tumtum ain't an Eitel. So what's going on? Are you a daughter? You're not a daughter. And that Gemara says, I'm a Abai Daichin. I see you're right. The Ainlay, he's not a Zachar, he's not a Nekeva. So the Zachar, what happens? They throw him to the Nekeva. Comes the Tum and says, get out of here. You're not a Zachar. He goes to the Nekeva. He says, at least give me by Nechasim Muad, give me something. What am I? The Nekeva tells him, you're not even a Nekeva. So he looks in the mirror. He says, ay vey vey, and he moves on. He's not a Zachar, not a Nekeva. The Rava no. Daichin Isa v'Yeshli. He's taka going to get something. He's going to get like a Nekeva. Going to give him the bottom. Why? The Seifa, awesome. Rav Shimon Gamliel, the Tanya, Yalda, Tumtum v'Adraginus. The Rav Shimon Gamliel, ain't Kedusha, Chalale, and there's Bans Mas. We're talking about a Bechar, which is a animal, for example, that's pregnant with a Bechar, and he wants to get away with it. He says, if it's a Zach, I want it to be Shlom. If it's in a cave, it's an Ayla. What is the Allah of the Behemoth Yalda Tumtum? The Allah is, there's no Kedusha Chal. It's Nishta Zach, and Nishta Cave, it's not Kedusha. Why? The Shita is, the Bar Yehu B'fnei Atzmais. Nishta Zachar, not in a cave. Meisvei frak tomorrow, you're telling me that what, you're nothing. We have a Beis that says someone who dies v'nech nechasim, misha meis. In such a case, tumtum, yairish keben, v'nizan kabas. You're telling me that he's yairish like a son, but he gets mizanis like a daughter. Bishmel Rava, we understand yairish keben in the case of nechasim mu'atim, v'nizan kabas, v'nechasim merubin. Like, okay, you're the bottom of the barrel, you get the least of the best. We understand if there's a lot of money, you're going to get like a daughter. If there's no money, you're going to get like a ben. Elabayo on Kuf Memalv and Aleph. Elabayo that says you're not getting anything. My knees and kabas. Why are you getting like a tabas? You're not a bas. He answers back. Abai says tamich. You're not either making sense. The Rava my yarsh kaben. You're not either getting like a ben. Ella, what's it mean? Royally rash vein loy hachanami royally son be'etzim. You could be maybe roy be nice, so you're not going to get the ain loy because the daughters could taino. Go prove it to us that what. That you're a daughter, that you're in a cave, and Lamaisi has no way to prove that. Now, the Mishnah told us, the case was, a person gets up and he says, if it's a Zachar, $100. If it's in a cave, I'm willing to give double. It sounds like the guy rathers a daughter. He's willing to give much more. He's putting money where his mouth is. So, fact tomorrow, I'm yell the Ishti Zachar, and if it's in a cave, it's double. Remember the Basra, a person rathers a daughter than a son. But we learned, we learned this beginning of Yishneichlein. Kol she'enoi maniach ben liyarsha kadosh baruch hu molel of Evra. He gets very upset. He's full of anger. She'never, like it says in the pasuk, vehevartem. And lafuke, the pasuk should have said betzim vinasatem. Why you say vehevartem? Esnach lashon lebita. We're learning from there lashon Evra ve'ena Evra ella ve'ena avara ella Evra. She'never, like it says in the pasuk, yayim Evra yamahus. You see, it's a bad thing. It's not a good thing to have not leave over a son. So what in the world is going on? My answer is no. You're right. Le'inyan Yerusha ben Adif, like we understand, since it stays in the family, we all know with a ben, it goes, stays in the family, shenk and a bas. What's going to happen? We learned this even earlier with other shvatim. It can even be much worse. But the concept is it leaves the family. However, le'inin harvacha bita yadifele. Regarding food v'chule, a person rather have a bas. And that's the first answer. Shmuel says another shiva. Shmuel amar hacham and vakeres. Askina, we're talking about the firstborn. That what? The bas chila. Simin yafa labanim. Very famous Gemara. A person has a daughter first. It's a simin yafa for the banim. Amri, why? We all know if there's older girls in the family, especially big mishpachas, the older sisters takes care, helps the mother a lot. You're not going to have ayin har in your family when there's first girls. No one's going to question too many stuff, and it's good for ayin har. My daughters are much better than my sons. Rashbam says because Rahman al-San, all his sons did not survive. Taisus doesn't like it. That's not true, he says. He had a chashuva sons, but he says it's very easy for a yeshiva to pick a son-in-law is much easier than his sons. He has no choice. His sons are his sons. At Lav Dafka, they can continue and take over the yeshiva. We all know that. It's much easier to pick a chashuva eidim than your sons are in the box. Whatever they come out, they come out. Mashenk and a daughter, you could choose chashuva eidim. That's how Taisus is masber. Why it's much better for a person to have daughters. The Ibay Seima Amani, it's Rabbi Yehudi. So which Rabbi Yehuda that says this concept that a person is much better? Hi Rabbi Yehuda, which Rabbi Yehuda? Elam Rabbi Yehuda Bakol. We had this mamish to ask the last daf in Shutfin. We saw it to Zayin and Beis. Zayin over there when we discussed Bakol that says Vashem Beirachas Avram Bakol. You know why Bakol? Shalai Sabas. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Punk Fakar Shai Salabas Ubakol Shema. That was the name. Mar says in the name of the Shamas Rabbi Yehuda Bartanami Loy Chasrei. Rahman al-Avram. The Adifim ben Mishamas, the Rabbi Yehuda is trying to bring a concept out. That Avram Avinu had everything. He had sons, he had daughters. Doesn't show that a daughter is better than a son. Elah Rabbi Yehuda, different Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, mitzvah, lazun, es abonis. The kavachayim, lebanim, the ask me third different Rabbi Yehuda. No. Mitzvah, lazun, es abonim, the kavachayim, lebanis, the loy, lisazon. Again, this concept is mamish, the concept, same teretz earlier. That by regarding harvacha bita difala, here we're saying this mefesh and shem Rabbi Yehuda, like the Rashbam says, Dibra Mascha Mani Rabbi Yehuda, Masnis Rabbi Yehuda Shechafetz Barchava the Bas, Kin Mefarish Lekamei. So this is Mamish Lekamei, very clearly Shitas Rabbi Yehuda himself. Elahad Tanya, we're going right into a new thing. We're going to acquire Yolda Zachav and a Keva. A person gave birth to a Zachar and a Keva. Hazachar Noitel Shisha Dinrin. So let's say we're talking about 8 dinners. 8 dinners is what? 25 times 8. So let's divide it into 25s. So the daughter is getting 50, the son is getting 150. What's a case that we know that the son is going to get 150 and the daughter is going to get a 50? Amar of Ashi Amritza L'Shmaitza Kamei Derav Kana. We're talking about the Messiahs. The Hainu. The Amar is false. He said we're talking about twins. He knew he had twins. The doctor's telling his twins, and he says if the boy comes out first, he's going to get 200. Nekeva comes afterwards, not getting anything. If the Nekeva comes out first, I'm willing to give 100, and the Zachar also 100. So the concept is as follows: the Amar Zachar Tchila Masai. Nekeva Acharav Loiklo. I'm not giving anything. Nekeva Tchila. I'm going to give a mana. Zachar Echar mana. And now the all the Zachav and a cave of Eloyadin and Haim now you Nafik Bereisha. We don't know Taka who came out first. So Zachar Shakum Manim and Manavshach. Because either way his Barry is for sure getting $100. Idach Maneh, what are you going to do with that extra $100? Have a Mom and a Mutik with Suffolk. You don't know if it was the Zachar came out first, therefore he gets it. Or maybe the Nekeva came out first, therefore Mom and a Mutik with Suffolk. How can we split it up? Another Shaiva Haditanya, Yalda Zachar and Nekeva. Ein loy elamana. Now look again, hechi mashkachas law. Sounds like that even in such a case, the afagav dama yitlu shnei manim. Afilachi ein loy elamana. So what's this case? Amarino, we're talking about bimavasreini. We're not talking about that regarding the zach and a cave, rather a person who tells him the good news. One kuf mem aleph on a base. The Tanya amivasreini b'maniftar rachamo shel ishti. Dr. Benu Gershon, we're talking about maniftar rachamos because we're talking about the b'chayr, the first person that's opening up her rechem. Im zachar yitomane. If it's going to be a zachar, you should get 100. Yal the zachar naitamanim. Nekeva, it should get a money. Yal the nekeva naitaman. What happens? Yal the zachar nekeva. Eloi elo money. If it gives both twins, he's not going to get, he's only get 100. It's very possible a person doesn't want twins. It's very hard to have twins. Whether it's the upkeep of the house, whether it's money, it's parnasa, it's a lot of stuff. Why it's very difficult to have twins. My answer is no. Nami, he says him zachem in a keva nami yitolman. So then what is he coming lafuke? If he's going to have twins, he's going to have a zachem, he's going to have a cave, he's always giving 100. And lafuke mai. Lafuke nefel. He's coming to say, dafku zachem in a cave, to say, if a person comes and tells me the bad news, which is basically a nefel, a miscarriage, I don't want to hear it, then avada, he's not going to get it. Rather, zachem in a cave is what? Is a bar kayama. A person tells his wife, I'm going to give the nechasim to the person. She was pregnant at the time. She's a mu'uberes, and she says, I want all my nechasim to go to this mu'uber. Amar Avuna, what do you mean? I have a mezaka l'uber. The mezaka l'uber like a person can be mezaka to an uber. What is an uber? Says Rav Nachman Ravuna. Our Mishnah says, Im yalda ishti zachar yitel maneh. The halach is yalda zachar yitel maneh. What do you mean? The Chari is talking about when she's a muberes. He says, if I want to give $100 a month to the zachar. I don't know who this Mishnah is. We don't hold like this. Who's the shita? Maybe Shitas Rameir. Why are you saying you don't know who it is? Maybe Shitas Rameir, we all know a person can be makna dov shabaylam. My answer is aim of the Shamas Lameir ledavar sheyesh nebaylam. This is what? Uber. Uber's not in the Welt yet. There's no makabel to receive it, to make a kinyan later. That we went through this at length. Shitas Rameir. The last time around when we discussed this concept of Rameir, davar sheyesh nebaylam misham, davar sheyein nebaylam misham eslay. There's nothing to be kind over here. Maybe Chitas Rabbi Yaisi, the Rabbi Yaisi does hold the Amar Uber Kani, the Tanan, the concept of Uber Paisel, the Einam Eichel, Div Rabbi Yaisi. And there's Bam's Masber the case. What's it mean? Uber Paisel. This is the halachas regarding a Eved. If the halacha is, could the Eved eat Truma? Now, in order for an Eved to eat Truma, he has to be 100% owned. He can't have other owners that are not a Kayin. Now, there's no question about it that this Uber, B'mei Ima is not a kain. He's an uber. He's not a kain. So is it going to knock out the halacha of the eved eating? There's other brothers. So if there's no uber involved, he's a full-fledged 100% owned by a kain, so he can eat truma. However, if we count the uber as a master of this eved, why is the uber kain is a separate concept? But the concept we're trying to bring out over here is that an uber, we clearly see could be yairish. Why? Because he's somewhat of a master. And there we're trying to bring out the point that we see from Shitas Rabbi Yaisi's one point, that an uber owns this evet to a certain degree. However, ve'enoi Michael, he still can't, he's paisel, and he's not. Michael, again, we're trying to bring out one concept, very geschmacka concept, that what? That an uber is somewhat of a aidan. So we see, according to Rabbi Yaisi, uber is kaini. That's not uber paisel. Uber paisel, ve'enoi Michael div Rabbi Yaisi. And my answer is no. Can't compare that case. Shani Yerusha Abba Maleh. Yerusha gets triggered on its own. Therefore, Uber is kainim. Hashem over here, what are we handling? Hamizaka. You're trying to give him a ton of Uber, so we're mechalek. Back tomorrow, V'leimelei Rabbi Yechanan B'Breiki, Damar Loishna Yerusha, V'Loishna Matan. It doesn't make a difference. It's Tanan. Rabbi Yechanan B'Breiki Ayimim Amar, as long as it's Misha Roili Yarsha Dvar Kayam. And then we ask, Amen L'Shamas Rabbi Yechanan B'Breiki, L'Davash Sheishna Ba'ilam, L'Davash She'eina Ba'ilam, Mishama. Mi Amar, is that really true? You're right, but let's put in both shitas. Put in shitas Rabbi Yechanan, the Loishna Matana, Loishna Yairish. Put in shitas Rabbi Yaisi, that what? Rabbi Yaisi holds your kaina. Let's make a merge. V'leimelei Rabbi Yechanan breaki v'saval Rabbi Yaisi. Mar says mechatesi. Mi yem the savala. How do you know he holds like Rabbi Yaisi? V'leimelei for tomorrow. Maybe we're talking about b'im v'sreini. You know what? We're not talking about the uber. We're talking about the person who gives me the good news. The problem is diktani seifa. Im in sham yairish elahu yairish akal. Even Vasreini. If we're talking about the Vasreini, not the yairish mavit, they will check his Yerusha. V'leimelei, you're right. Maybe it's only later. Bisha yolda, only the hainu when it's only going to give birth. Yachi diktani seifa. It says v'mamar kol ma sheteilet ishti yital arezita. Kol sheteilet kol sheyalda mevaylei. You tell me we're talking about only when it's yailets. Remember we're talking about the Amar Lecheshetelit. The Hainu is not kind anything today. However, when he gives birth, that's when he wants it to be kind. Ravuna l'tamei, the Amar Ravuna doesn't help. Af L'chesheteleid loy kana, since Lamaisa right now b'shasa kna, he's a uber. He can't be zayches, so too later it's not going to work to help. However, Rav Nachman holds, Rav Nachman argues in this concept. He holds that he is something in the Welt, enough to get some schus, and that when he gets into the Welt fully, it's going to go and be able to be kind of something. Where do I know this from? The Tanya. We have this concept by Ger. Ger shemeis ubizbizu Yisrael nechasav. Now we all know, we learned the mission Daf Memalach, Daf Beis, where we discussed regarding Ger, regarding chazakas. A Ger, the nechasav of Ger is hefker. Anybody can come and make a chazakas. So guys, everyone heard, the Ger died, so everyone comes running and takes away his nechasim. Next thing you know, they hear, Vishamu sheyesh lo ben. Everyone says, wait a second, there's a son. Or his wife is muberes. The halach is chayav and la'achzer. You got to give it back. What happens? So they all go and give back the nechasim. Echzira akol. Then they go hear that the son died. The halach is the second people that come and grab it. Hichzik b'shniya kana. Now, this is the raya. If you tell me Uber is not kind of anything, I was kind of Sunday morning. Then we heard that there's a mu'beres, so we put it back. Lamaisa, the Uber died, and it comes out, Uber is never kind of. So my kinyan that I made Sundays are 100% kinyan. Why in the world do I need to give it back? So we give two terutzim. Amma Abayo again. Shan Yerusha Ba Me'aleh Shani. Like we explained earlier, there's a difference between Yerusha and Matanas, etc. Rav Amano Shani Hasam they Rapoi Merafyon B'Yidayim Mikar. They never really 100% were kind of, because they knew there's an Uber, they heard something involved. Therefore, they never had 100% das to be kind of completely. What's the nafkamina? My benayik benayik sheshamu v'shemes v'loy mes v'achakach mes. It really depends if they heard that he died. Come Sunday morning before the first time they ever did a kinyan. The guy comes into the shul and says, Rabbi Isai, there's a ger that died. Not only the ger died, he used to have a muberes, but the muberes also died in the accident, let's say. So they come and quickly make a kinyan, and then they get news from the hospital, no, he's still alive. So B'Shas Maisa, that Sunday morning when they made a kinyan, it was 100% das to be kainit. It came out the interim, the Maisa was wrong, and then it found out the good news. The Maisa 100%, according to Rava, that what? They made 100% kinyan, they're going to get it. However, according to Abaye, it says, Yerushim Abba Shani. The Maisa came Sunday morning. Was the Uber alive? The answer is yes. You never made a kinyan. That's the practical nafkamina between Abaye and Rava, is what your machshava was. B'Shas Maisa, the first time that Sunday morning when you made a kinyan, did you think that those Uber was alive or not? That's the practical nafkamina. Toshma says Tinoik ben yoim echad, a baby that's one day neichel umanchel. So we're medayik that he can be yoirish and he gives over. Dafka ben yoim echad neichel umanchel in uber loy. If he's an uber not, so we clearly see clear that what uber loy kani. Rav Sheshes, Mar says no. Rav Sheshes already answered this. Neichel benichsa aim lahanchil achim minav. The hainu this muberes is what has a different mother. So if he's born for one day, is enough to take all the nechasim from his own mother and give it to the brothers from the father. V'davka b'yayim echad, avul uber loy. My timer, why not? One kuf min beis and beis. The who my inspiration. Let's say Rachmana litzlan isha's muberes. Now they say this dafka where it's natural. However, if she gets chas v'shalom shot in the head, the uber is still alive. Or actually, we even find that today's day and age that we try saving uber. So it's not the concept that a uber dies first. It's only, I think, when it's more of a natural misa. Let's say she doesn't wake up, whatever it is, we say the uber died first. Now, in such a case, if the uber died first, we know that for a fact, the brothers from the father cannot get his Yerusha. Why not? We know why. We learn it from just like the father. We learn it from the Baal. The Maisha is Bailey, not Neichel, Bakever. Who then the Uber is not Neichel, Bakever, to give it to the brothers from the father. For Ekdamar, is this really true that he dies first? Remember the inspiration Ba'ava Uvda. Uferchas Tlasim for Chusi, like convulsions, like spasm, thrash. It moved, it shake. We see the body still moving. We all know if you cut the tail of a lizard, it still makes the natural moving, but there's nothing really left, and eventually it will stop. Same thing over here, this mace was dead. Even today, the body could sometimes do, whether it's the fluids, the body could still really make movement, but rather there's nothing alive about the person. Which means to say is, let's just give a concept. You have Reuven and Shimon. Let's make a practical nafkamina if we're going to count this Levi. Levi was alive for a day or not. So we have three brothers, including the Uber. Reuven and Shimon, let's not count the Uber. We have Reuven and Shimon. There's $1,200. Let's make the numbers easy. If there's $1,200, there's Reuven and Shimon. The Reuven the Bechar is going to get how much? 800. Shimon is going to get 400. 3 divided into 3. Each the Bechar gets 2 portions. What happens if we count the Uber? So let's bring the Uber into the picture. We have the same $1,200. We split it not into 3. We split it into 4. Why? Because there's a Bechar. How much is $1,200 divided into 4? 3. The Bechar is going to get how many portions? 2. 6. The Uber is going to get 3. And the Shimon, the brother, is going to get 3. Now the Uber dies. You take the 3, you divide it into 2. You're going to get, each one's going to get 1.5. So Shimon is going to get another 1.5 from the 3. He has 4.5. How much does the Bechar have? He got 6 originally, plus that 1.5 of the Uber is how much? 7.5. So here we click 7.5. You have 6, plus the half of the Uber, 3. So in such a case, the practical nafkamina is, in such a case, the Bechar is going to walk away with less, which is 7.5 if you count the Uber. However, if you don't count the Uber, like we just said, he gets only 3 portions, he gets 2 of those, which is 8, which is a little more than 7.5. So that's nafkamina if we're mechalek, the ma'it, the chelik Bechar. So if he's a Uber, and that we're saying, it says in the, let's go back. If he's alive for 1 day, we said the nafkamina is he's going to get 7.5. Aval Uber like my time, because it says in the Torah of Yaldu loy Amar Achmana. That's one teretz. The Amar Maber the Beis Mishmein the Rava ben Chenoilat La'achar Misas of Enaman Bechel Bechar my time of Yaldu loy Amar Achmana of Holek Mesura Masnu Hachi. That's the one in Surah Bepimadisa Masni Hachi. Then what? Amar Maber the Beis Mishmein the Rava Bechar. The Rashbam says whether it's twins or there's multiple wives, the halacha is he's not going to get a double portion if the father was nifta my taimo. Yakir Amar Achmanov less of the Yakir. The halacha is like all these l'shayna damamar. By Ray there of Yosef Mishmei the Rav. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says in the name of Rabbi Yechonam Zakal Ober like Hana. Mishnah Seinu. Mimtai Mishnah Seinu Hayo v'daitoi. Therefore, again, there's a chiluk between a regular zika to Uber and a son. Go get 10 people. He wanted dafka 10. Should be an eido. Go tell them he can bring 10. He can bring 100 people. The halacha is what? There's a person told his wife, I'm giving you all my nechasim to our future children we're going to have together. The oldest son hears about this. Again, there's multiple wives involved. He gets married to the youngest wife. He says, I love you the most. I'm going to give all the nechasim to our children from you. Comes the other brother, says, whoa, what's going on? He says, what's going to be with me? Amalei, Gavri's talking about himself, third beard. What's going to be with this Gavri with me? Amalei, you know what? Zil kani kichad mivra. Take a portion, like whatever the kids are going to come out. So if we have 5 children together with a new wife, you'll go into the pole, it'll be like 6 children. So Hanach vade loy kanu. They're not even around. They're not even an Uber. There's nothing in the Welt. Dakati lesnu. They're not around. So the question becomes regarding this person, do we consider him as a portion? Is chaylik Talia? We saw already at the end of Cheskes Abata means a bacher, could be 16, 17, a lad, the bacher, b'makim b'naya, unless chaylik Talia b'nakim b'naya. So is he totally on the people that they weren't around? So Rav Oven, the Rav Meishav, Rav Yirmiyah, those 3 said the Amri is chaylik Talia b'makim b'naya. He is going to get a portion. The other 3, Rav Oven, Chanina, Rav Papi, Yitzchak, Nafcha, the Amri, no, less chaylik Talia b'makim b'naya. So we have a massive machlekes. So Amalei, Rav Avo that says you don't get it, Rav Yirmiyah that says you get it. Hilchas HaKavasan that you don't get it. The Hilchas HaKavasayichu that this brother is going to get it. Amalei pshita the hilchos kavasan. Allah is like this. Why? The kashishim minayin. We're older than you guys. The kashishim minayin. V'lav hilchos kavasan. The darki atun. You guys are young. Amalei midi b'kashushu. Tell you Muslims. Since when is the Torah decided by your age? B'time also. So Taka asked him b'time mai. What's Taka pshat? So he says Zillah gab the Ravav. Go to Ravav. The Aspirin LA is going to explain to you on Kupam Gimel and Alf. The Karchush Bey Reisha made Bey. Ben Drasha, the Hainu Haila Devar, he's going to nod, he's going to agree to me. So Azul Gabe, Rabbi Yirmiyah went to Rav and Amalei, he tells him, Ilu, Amalei Knika Chamar, mi Kani. If a person's going to say, I want you to acquire with the donkey, could you be Kainit? The Hainu, we're talking about what happened. The guy got up to his youngest wife and he said, I want the Nechasim to go to your children. That's like a Chamar, because there's no one in the Vel, just like a Chamar can be Kainit. Who did these children? The Itmar, Knika Chamar, like Kana. What is the halacha taka at v'chamar? You and a donkey should go be kaineh my nechasim. So it's a three-way machlokes. Rav Nachman Amar kaineh mechza. Rav Nuna Amar loy Amar klum. It's worthless. Rav Shesha Amar pum faket. You kaineh akol, you get everything because the chamar is no portion. So whatever's left, you're going to get, which is everything. Amar Rav Sheshis mina law. Where do I know this from? The Tanya Rabbi Yasi Aimer. Ein l'cham mar bekishus ela pnimi sheboy. We're talking about truma. You want to give, let's say, 1/50th. So you say you have 50 melons. I want to give one melon against all the other melons they have to give. Now every melon has mar. If you open up a melon, it's full of seeds, full of stuff that are bitter. Now, such a thing, l'chayra, is not good truma. So we're understanding that he's willing to give the melon, part of the truma is nachal, because it's bad. So you clearly see from there, so to over there, that concept that it's not mevatel, who are then by at v'chamar, the chamar is not going to cause an issue just because there's something there. On that we're saying no. And therefore the concept therefore what you have to do is add a little that's bad, that's not part of the melon that's good, but it doesn't stir. That's all we're trying to prove. That just like something that's bad is like a donkey, it doesn't stir the kinyanim. So why does it work? Ad v'chamar is bringing a bram raya. Shani awesome no. The Medrash we all know. Even truma, if it's bad, it still works. Truma mal yasi. Bad you should give truma yafa. But if you give truma raw, you still get a chait. How could you get a chait if you didn't give truma? Elamai, you gave truma, but it wasn't good truma. Because if you didn't give truma, you're not able to chait. Truma should never lie. Sis all of chait by rimchem es chelba mimeno. If I'm not giving truma, how can I get a chait? And you see it's chait lama. Mikan, very all know this, mentions many times in Shas. L'toyrem in a ra'a la yafa. Even though you shouldn't have done that, still truma. Very famous Maisa that a person walks over to 5 ladies. They're sitting in their own chutzner. Very crucial. There's 2 sisters in that chutzner. Now we're talking about he took figs. Who did the figs belong to? It belonged to these 5 ladies sitting in their chutzner. It was a year of Shemitah. We're not going to really get into it. There's Mam's Mazur, but why you have to say it was a year of Shemitah to tell us a chiddush that someone's mekadesh with Perish Shvius and Mekudeshes. Mafuke also that if it's Gzela, it's not Mekudeshes. Another concept is with this Maisa that we're going to see with these 5 ladies is that a person can make a shliach even though, which is a tzara, it's a co-wife, it's not so good. Alpha Pikain, we're going to see from this Maisa that one of them became a shliach for all of them. So again, we have 5 ladies sitting in their own backyard in the year of Shemitah. He goes and takes one of their figs, takes off a cluster, gives it to one of the girls as a shliach, and says, I want all you women as wives. And the halach is they accepted it. What is the halach in such a case? Now 2 of them are sisters. We all know you can't marry 2 sisters. So Ma'isa b'chomish noshim, we have these 5 ladies, B'hem shtei achayis, v'liket echad kilkolo shel ta'inem. V'shelahen ha'isa was theirs, v'shel shviyas ha'isa was hefker. And he says, Hare kulchen mekudashis li b'kilkos ha'is, v'kibla achas manei de kula, and they all said, yes, let's go for it. Amru chachamim, the sisters have a problem. Ein achayis mekudashis. So we're medayik, dafka achayis udein mekudashis. Hanachrias, the 3 other ladies that are not related mekudashis, fraktimar v'amai, the sisters are like the donkey at v'chamaru. Amalei, no. I need, like we saw the Chazir of Huna bar Avia Bechalma, the Shiloh, he himself saw it, the Lashon of Rabbeinu Gershom is, Emesh Bechalim, he himself saw it in the dream. The Maisev of Avia to Yuvta, he had such a Shiloh. Lav Mio Kimna, didn't we already say, the Amma Haruya Mikem Levia is Kaddish, Tis Kaddish, Le'enechanami, only me, the people that what are right, and the sisters are out of the equation. Oh, Dam Lidi Vesu, a person tells his wife, Nichsi lech vilavanaich. So it's going to be, you're going to get part of the nechasim. So now the shaila is, how do we consider this as one of the Rav Yosef's of Sad Indian and Mechsa? How do we consider when a person says, I want you to get it with everybody else? Are we splitting you separately out of the group, and therefore you're like 50% of the portion, and the rest are going to all split it, or we're just counting you as one of the portions? So what's the shayla? That's the shayla. How do we consider mechsa over here? Nixi lech v'levanayich Amar Rav Yosef kansa mechsa. We consider her. She gets 50%. V'Amar Rav Yosef min Aminallah. The Tanya Rabbi Aimer says v'haisel Aaron ulevanov, and we put Aaron separate. Mechsa Aaron, mechsa levanov. Amar Abai says, come on, Bishma awesome Aaron bachaluku. Then why in the world did you differentiate him? Lahachi par berachman, not to tell us lemishko palga. Isha, she's not Yairish, so the chiddush of him speaking up and getting up and saying, I want you to get along with all the children part of the Yerusha. Isha, la basirushi. Dayo shetitu kachman abonim. That's what I'm coming to tell you. Frek the Mar, Eniva, Ov da Havim Nardoi, V'agva Shmuel Palga, Taka got half. Bit Tavari, V'agva Yechina Palga. V'suk, Yatsav, Yitzchav, Yisef, Amar, and the case was, who to make Halila, the Shadami Malka. There was a taxes in order to collect money for the crown. And who are the taxes on? Was Avuli Vaistroigri, which the Lashon Ishbam is Ashirim Besarim. So all the ministers and all the Ashirim had to pay the tax. Everybody else was scot-free. Amar Rebbe, and Nesve Abuli Palga, Visturga Palga, they had to split the Ashirim and the Sarim, each split 50%. So Hachi Ashta Hasam, so you ever write 50-50? Mark says no. Hachi Ashta Hasam, Mikar Kalakasi, in the beginning, what happened was Abuli Avakasi. The only people that were mechuyev in the taxes were the Ashirim. However, the Sarim wanted to show Mamish that they're so dedicated to the queen, they're so loyal to the king. They would chip in. And he knew that, so why did he write it and make it official? To tell us, to tell us, remember the Hani Palgo. He came to tell us that each one should give 50%. Now, Kalim, we all know with the Sarin, it's capped at 60. So the halach is maybe Shisha Mekli He brings 60 in one, which is capped, the full max. Varboim Bekli Echad. Now on Kuf Mem Gimel and Beis, Vim Hevi B'chamisha Mekli Echad V'chamisha Mekli Echad. What's the halach if he splits it? The halach is Yatza. We're Medayik. Im Hevi in L'Katchil Loi. L'Katchil you shouldn't do Mechsa. V'Yisaka Daytech Kolki Agavnu. We're telling us Palgo. If you look at L'Katchil and Ami, what's the problem splitting it 50-50? More answers. You want to bring the max, which is what? 60. You know that it's capped at 60. So what you do it with lasui. So b'kliyach come the afshel lasui. You'll fill up to the max the first kli, which the tank will call it is capped at 60, and the rest you'll put in another kli. The hilchas kavase the Rav Yosef lamaisa. The halach is like Rav Yosef lafuke rabba. The halach is, we all know halach is Rabbah, except 3 cases in Shas. All 3 cases are in Bava Basra. We have a Daf Yomi, Daf Besada, we had it. That was the first case. Besada Indian Mechsa, the case of a Sada, where you have a Bechar, he gets 2 Sadas. So the brother can't say, I want to get the middle Sada. Like that, the Bechar, he's going to have one on the right, one on the left, and he's going to gain, whether it's Shaimerim, whether it's fences. The halach is the Bechar is the time to get both Sadas together. That's the case of Sada. Indian we just learned regarding a Shchiv Mara. When do we say till when he can be chayzer? The shayla if he has to get up, or if he's long as in the same subject. Rabbi Yosef wants to say, but Isa Inyan. That was the Inyan. Umechsa, this is the shayla over here. Do we say it's 50% a portion? He's only going to get a 50%. Very good shmak. V'hochas kavasi Rabbi Yosef besada, which is Yud Beis and Beis over there. Inyan umechsa. Ahu deshada piski desharel. A person sent nice clothing, he sends cloths, whatever he sent, all these silk stuff to his house. So Amar Babi, Amar Abami, Arui and Labanan. All the nice suits are going to go to the sons. Rui is Labanis, all the designer dresses are going to go to Labanis. We go to the Labanis, V'lay Amar and Adel Leslie Kalsa. Only if there's no daughter-in-law. But Leslie Kalsa, we say the Kalsa Shada. However, V'i Banti Loy Nesiva, and if there's girls that are not yet married, a person's not going to go and give it to the daughter-in-law more than the regular daughters. Loy Shavik Banti Mishta Lekalasi. Another mice. Now he had Havle Bra Ubarta. So the question is, a person saying my sons, or what is the halach when a person says my sons when he has a son and a daughter? Mi kara inchi livra b'anai. It's a concept you call it taka sons. L'saluka lebartim isakasi. Oy dama like kara inchi livra b'anai. L'maishcha lebartim matana kasi. He's coming to schlep in his daughter to tell her she's also going to get a matana. So we're going to bring rayas, and even though a person has one son, he uses a plural lashon, my sons. Amar by Tashma, uvnei dan, uvnei, which is lashon rab, and chushin. Amar Rava, no, demakatadana bechizkir shemir rubin kechushim shalkana, to tell us that he's like shegdelim harbe biyachad. That's why he's calling them. However, avada, it's not a raya to a regular case of one that a person will call it is sons. Amar Rava, we have the pasuk that says uvnei falu Eliyav. Rav Yosef Amar Uvnei Eisen Azariah, and Rav Yosef maybe said it because the next psukim, if you look in Bamidbar, it brings the grandchildren. So he wanted to show us another pasuk Dafka Uvnei Eisen Azariah. So we have a Bam Raya that even though it's a lashon of one son, we still use a lashon of plural. Oh, Damalun, last mice before the Mishnah. Oh, Damalun Nechasa live night. I want my Nechasa to go to my sons. Now what happened was Havli bra, he had a son and a grandson, and the son died. Uvar bra. Question is, there's a person called as Einakluch, my sons. Kari inchi levar bra bra eloi. So it's a big machlekes. Rav Chaviva ama kari inchi levar bra bra. Yes, a person calls his Einakluch's sons. Mar Rav Ashi ama no. Loi kari inchi levar bra bra. Tani kavasa Mar Rav Ashi. A raya that you don't. Says a maidan na mebanim. So who's maidan na? He's still mutter of nevanim. Ela mai, when he said I maidan na for my sons, he was not cheshbening his Einakluch. He calls his Einakluch Einakluch, and his sons means his first generation. We are in the Mishnah of Kuf Mem Gimel Lamed Beis. Haniach bonim gdoilim viktanim. You left over children. Now hishbiach ishbichu gdoilim esenechasim. The older brothers went and there were mashbiach the nechasim ishbichu la'am. So you put it back into the pot. We call it the tfusas habayis. Im amru, however, if they got up and they said they went to Bezdin or the Tzibur or to Eidim Zakter Shban, any of those three cases, im amru ru'u mashiniach abba harei anu oisim va'eichlim ishbichu la'atzman. They get up and they say, we're more willing and able to split it up today. We want to go on our own investments. And the Rashbam says in this whether it was backlog, whatever reason, they didn't take care of it, and they're waiting, and they went and Mashbiach goes to themselves. The same concept Im amra ru'u masheniach li baili. See whatever my husband left over. Again, she says, I want to split it. So it's told if you're willing to split it or not. When the Gemara Amar Chaviva Barei the Yosef the Rava Mishmei the Rava Loishanu Dafka L'Sheshavchu Nechasim Machmas Nechasim. When do we say that it goes back into the pot? There's Bam's Masber. You took this money from the Tfusas Abayis. You didn't lay out one penny. You went and hired workers from who? From the assignments money. And you think you're going to go take the profits? Doesn't work like that. That's when we say it goes to the back. If they went, they went and did it themselves and hired their own workers out of their own pockets, then avad shvichal atzma. Fact the Mar'ini v'Amar Chanina filu lo yaniach lem avien. Elo hu denai aschar lamsa. Denai, according to Rashbam, is a pit with its cover, and you do it and you rent it out in order for people to irrigate their fields. Taisa says he doesn't like that pshat. He rather says it's more like a watchtower, a kli gavah. You can even sleep there, that you can see from very far, what we would call today a watchtower. The halach is eschar lamsa. Now, for Marvo deny the machmas atzmayu, and you still see it goes la'amsa. They watch it themselves. My answer is no. Shani denied the terusu David v'afiluk tanim nami matzu manterlei. Even tanim, it's such a very minor thing that they did that even the tanim are going to get it. So there is a shaila when it says tanim could also watch it. What is about a katan amuto barisa? He can't watch it, a newborn. So it's really totally how we understand it. What is it? Is it that it's so insignificant that you didn't do anything so chashav? Or the ktanim themselves could do it? So if you focus on the ktanim, katan, multiple can't do it, therefore it's going to go to the g'daylim. However, if you look at it, that all they did was something very minor, that even the halach is katan, hamutul, baris is going to get it. This was already yesterday's daf. Amru ru'u masheniach abba harei anu oisim eichlin, the halach is ishbichul ha'atzma. Rav Safra, Shava Kavu Azuzi, Taka, Rav Safra's father left over money, and he went and he invested it. Sheklinu Avabu Iska, and he made a lot of money. Comes the younger brother, says, what's going on? We have a Mishnah. It goes to the middle. Asu Achi Tavu Bedina Kamei the Rava. Amalu, no. Rav Safra Gaver Rabahu. Rav Safra, again, he was a chash of a person. Loishavik, Girse Vitarach Lachrini. He's not going to go for his own sons to give a little beer. By the way, you're going to leave your younger Yisayim hungry? How do you understand these? If you're Adam Chash, you take care of them. So Adi Rabbi, we say Gdailim, they only learned enough to make their own money, and they went back they closed the shop and went back to learn. So such a person is Torah so chashiv that he's only able to as much as he needed to live, and he went back to learn. He wasn't cheshbon the assignment get taken care of by people from a less G'dayla Hadar that don't need, they'll get taken care of. Ha'isha she'eshbichas and echasim eshbicha lamsa. Frak Gemara, ha'isha b'nichsi yisayim yasmi ma'avit. How do we get to the point that the ish even has part of the nechasim of Yisayim? So Amar Yirmiyah be'isha Yereshes, the Rishban gives two ma'achim, either that the Baal clearly said, Titol ishti kechem and abanim, in a case where, and you're not Michael of the Chule, or the scenario is quite a complex scenario where he married his niece. So it comes out that there's part of the money where it's really Yerush Zaydis. Taisus doesn't like this because of this. It comes out not really Yerush the father, rather it's really Yerush the grandfather. But you marrying your niece, we're talking about the father died, the husband died, and they're really handling the grandfather's pot, where it comes out the Yisayimim, and the aunt, which is the mother, the niece, could end up splitting the grandparents' chalukah. Amar Shvek Demara. Amar V'yem V'yeshi Yereshes. Shvek Demara Pshita. It's Pashat that she should get it. Ma'u the Tim given the lav darka lemetroch. You would have a havamina since it's not there for to work. Avagav the parish. Kamay the parish dummy. Kamash Malon. If you didn't get up and say, I'm willing to split the pot. Otherwise, I'm going to go out on my own and it's going to go to myself. Unless you say that, Kamashma, unless you say that, you're going to have to give it back to the Tvusas Abayis. V'em amaru ma sheniach li baili. I said, v'chelas the loch is a shpichal atzma. In fact, the Mar Pshita, you got up and you threatened, you said, I'm willing to go on my own. Mar says, no, now the tema came in the shpichal milsa, the amri katarchi kami asmi. Everyone in shows, look, oh, you're so chashiv, you take care of your saimim. Achula achla kamash malon. It's very nice, covet is very nice, but she rather money much more than that. Rav Chanina Hamesi Isha Livnai Gadol, very bechidish. It's a hilchos of Taima. There's going to be 4 stuff that you need in order for this halacha to apply. However, if a person marries his oldest son, Beis, the halacha is Yekaineh, the son is Kaineh the house. V'dafka, there's 4 things. It has to be Gadol, has to be the oldest. V'dafka, he has to be married in Besula. V'dafka, it's the first marriage, Ishtar Rishayna. V'dafka, she is Rishayn. It has to be also that he's making the first chasana. However, if the younger children got married before, all these halachas is not going to apply. Now, pshita yichalei avid Beis v'aliyah, then dafka the Beis kana aliyah lekana. What is the halacha chsadra? We had a chsadra right. We had this in the beginning of Bava Basra, which is basically like a front attachment to the house, or we could call it a sunroom. What is the halacha regarding the sunroom? Beis chsadra ma'u u'shnei batim. We had this in Chatzka Batim by Shchuna Gavoy, same type of concept. The inner house, what is the halacha? All those ma'u. The halacha is l'maisa teku we blind with a teku and a mitzvah chaver olavarai. Meisa for Ekdamar Yichalei Ave Beis v'Kli Bayis, then the furniture Kli Bayis Kana Bayis Leikana. Amir B'Yirmiyah. So you clearly see that you're not buying the house. Amir B'Yirmiyah Kagoin Shayai Tzarai Shel Aviv Munach Shah Mitaka used it, and in such a case you're not kind of because Avadi is not going to leave his own. He's not going to leave from his own chazaka to give it to the son. Now, even if you have a chicken coop there, or a puppy, atzitza, the arsena, which is fried fish. We had this in Samachum and Beis, the same type of concept of fried fish. What did he do? He didn't want to give his house. He put his sandals there. He put his shoes in there. He put in a kai small shemen in order again not to make sure that the halach is going to happen. That's going to go to his son. Amar Mazucha Hani Tlas Mili Shavinu Rabbana Kelchas Taima. Chada is hot, this concept that the son, a Gadol, first marriage, first wife, Pesula, a Gadol is going to get it. Idach, we learned earlier, even though you wrote, I'm giving you a matana, we said, a person is not going to give away the nechasim to his wife and not to the kids. Rather, he did it to make her feel chashiv. Idach, Rav, Manali Biyatcha. Even without any kinyanim, without chazakas, it's also a hilchasa belai tama. Okay, we're on Kuf Mem Dalet on Beis. It's going to be the final mishnah for today. A'achin hashutfin. Now you have a brother, a family full of boys. The father died. Shenafal echad mehen le'umnus. Now what is umnus? The Rabbeinu Gershom is Myrich. Exactly what the umnus is, that every month they would go to different families, and they would go through the mavai, and every month they would pick a different family, and he would go and collect the money from everybody, taxes v'chulei. However, if he was very aggressive, he could make a lot of profits, because all he had to pay was the keren to the melech. Everything above went to their family. Now, what is the halacha when they went to pick a certain son? The halacha is, we don't say it's machmas the son, rather it's machmas aviv, tam the mishpacha. Shenafal echamem le'umnas, nafal emsa. Chalav and nisrapi, a person gets sick, one of the brothers. The halacha is nisrapi mishma atzmai. All medical expenses, their Taisa says, dafka b'refuah sheyesh lekitzvah. Very nice insurance, medical insurance, whatever all your medical stuff, you got to pay it on your own. Tana, hi umnus. What's this? Umnus, lo umnus, hamelech, like we explained, there's taxes, v'chul. Tana abanan echem and achin shemnu gabai, whether he's a tax collector, oi, for lumstus, for the Dr. Shbam, it's a shaiter, a policeman, it's a choshev position. So im machmasa achin, if it's because of the family, la achin, machmatzmoy, he himself, la atzmoy. For Gemara, it's because of the family, they're all known as a spitz. La'achim pshita. Gemara says, he's the best of the best. You're part of the family. You're right. It's very possible they picked the spitz brother because he's better, but it's mitam the family. Echod mina achin shenoto mesayim zos lil meitayra limlein umnus. Lamaisa, there's a family, they all are living. One of them went and took money, and he went into a different country, whatever it was, to learn Torah. The brothers could tell him, if you're living by us, no problem. We'll feed you. You want to leave our house, whatever it costs him to live, take it. Why should he lose by leaving the house? Mar says, it's much more, there's two mahalchim, either mitam bracha in the house, it's much more, or Taisa brings down from Ben Chananel, ner lecho ner lameo. It's much easier to feed a family of 5, and you bring in another person, 6 portions, 5 portions. We all know when you bake for Shabbos, it doesn't make a difference when you add another portion. Same type of concept. When you're living in my house, it's much cheaper than to go on your own. Okay, so give me something. Make the cheshbon and give it to me. My answer is enechanami. Chalav and nisrapi, nisrap mishalatz. Mishalach, Rav Mishmeder Belo, Loishanu, Dafka, Shechalav, Pshios. His fault that he got sick. Have a bainis. Rachmana Litzani got himself an oinis, nisrapim, and an emsa, then everyone has to pay for it. So how do you know what's the case of Pshiach? Pshia, Kederb Chanina, Domer Chanina. Hakol bidei shemayim chutz mitzina pachim, except cold wind, cold drafts. That's what we all know. You should have gone out with a coat. You decide you'll be fest. You'll walk out without a coat and you got sick. Tough luck. You got to pay on your own money. She'nemer, like it says in the pasuk, sin in pachim b'derech ikesh. However, shoymin nafshoy yerachik mahan. Again, either tzin and pachim, some want to say means hot and cold, but the concept is a person who could prevent himself from getting sick, and he goes out in such weather and he gets sick, then he has to pay it from his own. Mitzvah Hashem. Next week we're going to continue from the Mishnah of Kuf Mem Daled Amud Beis, the second Mishnah.